Hello! Welcome back to the Variant Geek podcast. I'm Brennan.
I'm Zach.
Jason!
And today, we're here to talk about sci-fi versus fantasy in different media outlets. So, who wants to start? Pick an outlet.
I'll talk books, I guess, to start with. That's something we haven't really talked about much here.
True.
Other than, the 39 clues that we mentioned in the first episode.
For 12 seconds.
Honestly, in my personal opinion, when it comes to books, I have to go with fantasy. That's most of the books I've read are fantasy related. Percy Jackson, which is arguably one of the best young adult novel, and just novels in general, in my opinion, is something that everybody I think should read. Heroes of Olympus.
Child, yeah.
Heroes of Olympus is okay. I read the first, I think, two and a half books.
Read the Warriors Cats book in there, you?
I never read the Warrior Cats.
What?
I didn't even know there was a book called The Warrior Cats.
Hear about Warrior Cats, Zachary?
No. Harry Potter is a decent novel.
Is that fantasy or sci-fi, Zach?
That's fantasy. And then, you have, it's, would you consider stuff that, back in the day was considered science fiction, but now that we have the same technology in those books, are they still considered science fiction? Because it's not fiction.
What section is it
anymore.
put into at Barnes & Noble or at the library? Science fiction. It's still a science fiction novel. What are you talking about?
I can't think of anything specifically.
That doesn't exist.
But there are stuff that exists.
There are stuff.
There are stuff.
There is stuff.
Where we have the technology that they've were using and mentioning in those books today.
I don't know. I still consider it sci-fi because that's when it was written.
Yeah.
How it was written, it's still a sci-fi novel. It doesn't become,
Historical fiction?
non-fiction because it's still sci.
And I mean, something I'm pretty sure both of you will elaborate on because I've never read the books is Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
I still can't believe you haven't read them.
My parents own them. That's the extent.
Wow.
To it. I've seen the books. I've touched The Hobbit.
I thought you said I've seen the movie and who hasn't really?
I've touched the book.
Grody until this last break. You want to go?
Yeah. What do you think?
Lord of the Rings.
Done and
Fantasy.
answered.
Boom. Done.
Boom. Finished. But I don't know. What do we want to talk about with the differences? What do you consider sci-fi?
So I guess I can piggyback off of that. So I agree with Zach in the fact that when I'm shopping around for books, I prefer to pick out more fantasy. That's the section I go to first. Obviously, sci-fi fantasy section is combined. That's why we're talking about it. There's differences. Anyway, I tend to lean more fantasy. I like, magic and dwarves and elves opposed to robots.
Robot.
But something I consider sci-fi is Death Watch, what I'm reading right now, the Warhammer 40k book, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily futuristic.
I guess now I've been starting to get more into sci-fi just because I've been starting to read more Star Wars books, and those are just actually really interesting.
Yeah.
And fun to read.
Oh yeah.
I'm I think halfway, if not 3/4 of the way through the book on Darth Revan, who hopefully there's apparently a new Clone Wars in the works. I will dish out all the monies for it.
What if it's $7,000?
I guess I'm going into debt.
No,
What do you mean going into?
No, but
you're right.
We're college students, brother. We're in debt.
But I mean, it really just depends on my mood, I guess, at the time. But I think book-wise, I definitely tend to lean more fantasy than I do sci-fi.
I would say that is a consensus among the three of us.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, in general, that's kind of how I'm going to end up leaning. But in the defense of sci-fi novels, I just think fantasy is one of those genres that is just I think there's just so much more of it. Warhammer 40k has their own thing called the Black Library, where they have writers that are dedicated to writing that.
Yeah.
But that's one section. And a lot of sci-fi novels date back 80s, 90s.
Sci-fi has to set within set parameters
Mm-hmm.
where you can't go off and Deus Ex Machina every single story, every single
Right.
thought process, because that's not natural and that's
Mhm.
not real. But fantasy, you can do whatever. Like, fantasy doesn't have those natural guidelines of this isn't humanly possible,
Right.
because what is considered
Because magic.
humanly possible. You can add magic. You can
Mhm.
add different creatures.
Well, like, I guess that kind of, because Star Wars, I guess, is both fantasy a little bit and sci-fi. It has kind of both aspects, because you have, you know, your different races, I guess, but you also have like your magic system.
The Force.
The Force.
And I mean,
See, I would consider Star Wars science fiction, sci-fi, just in the fact that that is the main.
Spaceship.
It's the main theme. The central theme is
Yeah.
space travel,
Mhm.
and then
Blaster
adding,
weapons.
well, and you can add in the fact that the Force. I mean, George Lucas decided the Force was symbiotic with midichlorians,
yeah,
and that's a species, and they found those species with scientific means,
Mhm.
where that's a symbiotic relationship between the people who have the Force and the creatures that like give you the Force, or like are present when you have the Force.
and then I guess kind of sort of branching off of books, I guess you go into manga and graphic novels, which I tend to lean more probably sci-fi.
That's right. That's what I was gonna say. I lean sci-fi with that. I was obsessed with the Boba Fett is Dead comic series from Dark Horse. I love Dark Horse is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't missed for me at all. There's a reason they're around. I mean,
Yeah.
I love Star Wars comics. I mean, I can't feel like we're being one and two trick ponies over here with Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, but I actually, I mean, I was talking to you guys over break about it. I got an Assassin's Creed Valhalla comic
Oh yeah.
series. It's done already,
Yeah.
which I hope they continue it or it'll change the story up or something, because I was really enjoying that, and that was one of the first like fantasy,
Fantasy.
yeah, like fantasy stuff that I actually enjoyed as far as comics go. Because actually, you know what? I read a World of Warcraft comic series way back in the day.
You read a WoW comic series?
And, okay, you don't have to be a
Sarcastic.
boy about it. Okay. But, yeah, no, I loved that. But other than that, I have never really enjoyed a fantasy comic series or graphic novel or anything like that. And would you consider, like, you right there, you, Mr. Anime Boy,
What?
would you consider, like, your Attack on Titan and all that stuff sci-fi?
That was actually what I was gonna like.
Mhm.
Would you consider, because cyberpunk is sci-fi,
Yeah.
and I would say like Attack on Titan is closer to steampunk in a sense.
Because it's set back, but
And
there's
I
still
feel
that
like-
tech.
Yeah, and I feel like steampunk, it borders the line between fantasy and science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to say it probably leans more fantasy. But like Attack on Titan's probably have
Your
more fantasy.
Naruto's fantasy, 100%.
Berserk is fantasy.
One that I also have to go kind of say is kind of that walk the line aspect would be like Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, you have your militaries, they're all fighting each other, and they using, you know, old-timey rifles and stuff. But then, you know, I'd say fantasy. I'd say that's fantasy.
Because
Because the alchemy aspect
Yeah.
is where, like, that comes from.
Mav is definitely steampunk.
Yeah. But I'd say it borders fantasy, or more fantasy.
Yeah. Like, and then you know you go into comics. I mean, most DC and Marvel
Oh, they
are
dominate.
sci-fi.
They dominate for a reason.
And that's why sci-fi is huge in the comic realm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also because it can set these parameters of if we kill this character, we can't bring them back, or if we
Right.
snap, how do we get them to snap back in order to consequences?
Mm-hmm.
So they utilize the rules, air quotes are on the rules, to ensure that the story makes sense and the story isn't
Right.
just huge, dramatic, end all be all, everything to the
Yeah.
end of the world.
And like, there's a comic series that I really want to get into. at some point. I think I might look for it whenever we go to Barnes & Noble next.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not closed.
If we don't go there when it closes in 5 minutes, is The Batman Who Laughs.
Mm-hmm.
A, he looks ridiculously cool. But B, like, it has a really cool premise, and I'll probably go into it more if we have like kind of like a manga comic book episode. But I mean, it's really dark,
Right.
and I feel like it's probably more sci-fi, as per all DC and Marvel, pretty much. There are exceptions, of course, but it definitely, I think, has some fantasy elements to it.
Mm-hmm. And since we're talking about, in like writing and stuff, with, comics, manga, and books, I don't know how much necessarily Zach, maybe you'd be able to speak to this, but maybe Jason more. What would you consider, like, plays? Or scripts?
I mean, I guess.
Like, what do you feel about those? Like, where do you tend to lean as far as if you're putting these? Because obviously, you have your historical pieces that are like your contemporary that don't fit into this category, but there are, shoot, there was just a high school in, I think, New York or New Jersey that did Alien.
Yeah.
As a play?
Yeah.
It was a musical.
Or a
wasn't it?
musical?
I thought it was a play.
It might have been a play. I don't remember. I'll look it up while we talk. But yeah, they got a huge grant for it, and they just did that. So what do you think about that, or do you not know?
I mean, how can you place media in one box?
You can't.
So
I'm just asking, like, as far as plays go, if you know
I mean,
of any
it's
that
probably
you tend to lean.
it's easier to do fantasy,
Mhm.
and I'm using air quotes when I say easier.
Like She Kills Monsters.
Yes, something where,
Cursed production.
well, you literally just have the ability to make things up and like create things, and like there's a gelatinous cube as one of the characters, versus with
Yes, it was the play, by the way. Sorry.
okay, and with science fiction, you probably have to make scenery and characters, costumes, props, and
What kind of plays do you like watching more? Do you like watching sci-fi films more or fantasy?
could not give you a correct answer because I don't even know if I would have a preference. I don't know if there's sci-fi plays.
Very few.
Yeah, like because it's probably
It's not a very fair contest to really talk about. I was just to add more meat to it,
Mm-hmm.
while we're hitting on the media. Yeah, obviously, I'm gonna say fantasy. I mean, Spam-A-Lot, Something Rotten, hilarious musicals that could be you really can't consider to be historical because
They're not.
they're not.
They're not.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was just something real quick to segue, I guess, since we were talking about writing. But
Yeah. And then I guess
Well, because you can move in from plays to television shows, movies, media,
yeah,
visual media,
Yeah.
where
I
that's.
guess we'll start with TV.
I
yeah.
was gonna say it's so much easier to do TV as sci-fi or TV as fantasy or.
What do you consider The Walking Dead?
That's horror. I mean, it's
It's
horror.
horror.
It's horror.
It's a horror soap opera. But, like, does it fall into any of these? Because
I mean, because
zombies?
it's post-apocalyptic, and when you think post-apocalyptic, you usually think sci-fi
Yeah.
in a sense.
But there's not any set things that make you think
See,
science fiction.
I would, if we're using these two categories, I would
Yeah.
say that science fiction
Because
Because
Zambinos.
because it's zombies.
modern
and
world.
I don't remember how, if it was a disease or if it was like a man-made disease, like any other basically zombie
Mm-hmm.
TV show, movie, whatever. But okay, so this new TV show, The Stand,
Yeah.
based off of Stephen
Big
King's
sci-fi.
book, would you consider that sci-fi or fantasy?
Sci-fi.
Because, well, so it's sci-fi where it's set in the army created the Captain Trips and it killed 99% of the
Yeah.
populace.
So I'm going to say, like, a lot of those, like,
But-
plague-style things, like those man-made disease things, I'd consider that sci-fi.
Sci-fi. But in that book, because I have read that book, there's a character who they call him a demon. They say that he's not the devil, but he's kind of like the devil. And his name is Randall Flagg. And he
Mhm.
has like he's got these superpowers, like he can control animals, he can read people's thoughts, stuff like that. And I wouldn't consider that sci-fi. I would consider that fantasy. So there are fantasy elements in this sci-fi
Right.
book, movie, miniseries.
That show it's out, like it's
Yeah.
coming out weekly right now.
Yeah.
How many more episodes is it? It's on CBS, right?
Yes.
Huh.
I don't know
We
if
could
I
watch
have
that
it.
at some point. 'Cause I
Yeah.
have
I
CBS.
am very excited to watch it, but
Yeah,
I haven't seen it
Yeah,
just because I really like the
because
book.
over break my mom reread the book for like the third time.
Yeah. It's a good book.
Because I mean the amount of books my mom owns, I love her. I do. Shout out to my mom, like Brennan did last week.
Woo!
She owns thousands of books. Like, it's ridiculous how many books she
Can
owns.
confirm was there.
Like, she even has some of the old books
Well, I mean,
from the
hopefully
Lovecraft. Like, they actually
Really?
had an Arkham printing house.
yeah.
And I think she has like one of the last books that was ever printed there, because the Arkham Printing House is out of business. I think it closed down. But on the topic of TV shows, you have in live action, because there's so many, like you can do so much more with animation than you can with live action,
Mm-hmm.
which is why animes and cartoons and stuff like that are good, and the live action adaptations of them are usually really, really bad, because there's just so much you can't adapt to it, and it's also hard to collapse, hours and hours of episodes into a 2-hour movie.
Right.
But like, it really depends. I mean, because I like my fantasy animes, but I also like my sci-fi anime, and I like my sci-fi cartoons too, like Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Dude, best NA.
Phenomenal show.
Oh my goodness, so good.
I mean, I could still go back and rewatch every episode,
Yeah.
and I don't get bored.
Even like the being older now, like I know always like whenever like the friggin' when they had that Jar Jar arc with all the politics, I was like,
Oh, yeah.
this is terrible. But now I'm like, this is good. Like there's
Yeah.
actually really interesting stuff in here. But to backtrack really quick, I have to go back and say that Walking Dead I'd consider sci-fi because of one moment in the comics that I remember where Michonne like has a little thing at the end of the comic saying like her thing about the outbreak started with aliens that like sent, because they call it like a space spore. I don't remember if they said this in the show at all, but I know it's in the comics. It's like the CDC guy's like space spore, and it's like the aliens to weaken us and then harvest us as slaves to get water because they use it for currency.
Whack.
Water.
War of the Worlds, who?
Back to shows.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
I don't know where I fall for this one.
Like, because there are a lot, and I mean a lot of good shows
Mhm.
that are both sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah.
You have shows that only lasted one season, sadly, like Firefly.
Firefly was so good,
I'll be
dude.
honest, I've never seen Firefly. I've been meaning to.
Do you
I've
know
seen
why it didn't keep going,
I've
right?
seen Serenity. Because they...
Released it out of order.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they released it out of order. It actually had huge, like,
I really liked
fans,
it.
fans loved it.
Yeah.
But
Amazing
they released it out of
casting.
order because they didn't. I don't think they wanted to continue it. They just kind of threw it out there because they didn't think it was going to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, "Well, it succeeded,
following.
but we don't have any plans for it." So,
I wonder
I
if
don't
they'll
know if
bring
you
it back soon.
maybe. I mean,
I would say
most of the cast is still alive. I think,
I
right?
would say almost everyone in that cast is still alive.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you're
I mean,
talking
Nathan
about the
Fillion's-
characters,
Nathan Fillion's got a lot skinnier, but Alan Tudyk still doing great.
he died in Serenity.
Yeah, he did.
Spoiler.
Wait. Oh, Alan Tudyk.
Oh my god.
He thought Alan Tudyk. He's like, Alan Tudyk died.
No, he. Spoiler, died in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, when does the movie take place? Before or after?
After.
I wonder.
When did it happen?
I haven't watched
know.
Firefly.
It's good. It's good. You need to watch it.
I do, because I love Nathan Fillion.
And I don't-
Actor.
My hard thing about I don't know where I fall where it comes to TV. I know where it comes in movies, but TV, there's so much sci-fi pumping out right now. Like, dude, they need to pump the brakes a bit because there was a moment there, a lot of the fantasy that was coming out, other than like Game of Thrones was kind of hot bean water, just literal dog water. Because like there's some stuff on Netflix that they release that, like, I don't know how to feel about it. There was also like that movie, you know, the kid that would be king, like the British, like the King Arthur thing. I don't know. It's just I feel like a lot of the fantasy coming out has been focusing just like on kids.
Yeah.
Like there was that one Netflix series like Letter to the King or something like that.
Yeah.
I think I watched that with my mom, and by episode 3 I was like, "This is bad," but I'm gonna finish this, and it finished out being bad.
Water.
No hate though. I mean, good performances. I just didn't really like it, and it's just a lot of the fantasy's just been a miss for me.
Well, has it just been gauged toward the younger generation?
Yeah, and that's what I think. That's kind of what happened with fantasy too or with sci-fi for a long time, because you had Star Wars, in, the 70s and early 2000s, and then it kind of went away for a bit, and then that renaissance of sci-fi really kicked in with like the Clone Wars, and there's all kinds of stuff we're not talking about too with like well like the 100.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's just so much to talk about.
You have the best, arguably in a lot of people's minds, one of the best fantasy shows of all time in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I mean,
Until
take out
6.
season 8.
Until season 6.
Season 7. Season 7 had the Battle of the Bastards, didn't it?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because that's, I think, one of the highest rated episodes of all time on IMDb, anyways.
It's definitely season 6, actually, I think.
Is it? I thought it
Yeah,
was
season 6.
So, because...
I'm going to bet $5 at season 6.
Yeah.
Are you looking it up?
I'm looking
Okay.
it up.
But, so, for me, because all of this fantasy has always been hit or miss, I've never gotten in... Like, I'm not a huge fantasy TV show person.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's always like, let's go as dramatic or as extremely out of the box as we can. And then I'm like, this doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It was season 6.
Haha! There was, oh my gosh, there was a TV show. It got canceled after one season. Terra Nova.
That was
Terra Nova.
That was what I was going to bring up.
So good.
It was. I was really, really, like, disappointed that they didn't continue it.
That was one...
I thought it was doing well.
Is that
really
like at the
enjoyed
way
it.
end where there's like a portal that...
So it starts off,
like they send
Earth's
people-
dying,
Yeah,
and they send people back in like the prehistoric era to set up a colony and like restart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how it ends. Like a T-Rex gets back to the future or something.
I thought it was like
hot garbage.
Like some hot garbage. I thought it was like they like send a bunch of people back, and like all the people that are going back are trying to like destroy the planet.
There was all kinds of crazy stuff going on, man.
I'm
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix now.
Is
Or
it?
something. It's on something, and I need to watch it again.
I would definitely rewatch it.
Oh yeah, like I remember like the
Kinda
episode
fun.
where like pterodactyls like were attacking them or something like that. Like little birds were coming after the colony because their thing fit. Like it was super cool, and it has what's his name? It has what's his name?
Stephen Lang.
Stephen Lang. I always forget his name.
I can never
Literally
remember.
every single time. Who is this man?
Jason over here, like I tell you we do this every year. Does nobody care about Shig the Sloth? But I don't know. I think I'd have to say more sci-fi just because there's so much more of it in TV. Obviously with The Witcher,
Yeah.
I'd consider Castlevania
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because
Castlevania's
anime.
fantasy.
Well, okay. With anime, there's a lot more fantasy than sci-fi
I mean,
that I have seen. So I don't really know how to gauge that. As far as live action television, I'd say sci-fi for me, just because of Clone Wars isn't live action. So there's a lot of it coming out that I'm really excited for on both sides. I mean, I am beyond excited for the Amazon Lord of the Rings series.
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
I'll cry.
Like, I'm really, like, when it comes to fantasy, because anime, it definitely likes to lean more fantasy, I think, than it does sci-fi. Because there are some good sci-fi anime out there, like Cowboy Bebop and stuff
Sword
like
Art.
that.
Cowboy Bebop is good.
I think I'm halfway through it, and it's really good so far.
I really like Sword Art Online.
Sword Art Online, I liked it. I think
Until about season 2.
I got to a little halfway through the elf part where they got.
That's when I stopped, though, is my thing,
And
man.
like I heard it gets okay, but like at the
It's
same
just
time,
so weird.
Sword Art Online is one of those animes that everybody likes to dog on. everybody.
And I don't
I've
dog on
seen
it because
5 episodes.
I was talking to Arter about this.
Yeah.
Because Arter's one of those people that you're like, you mentioned anime, he's like, yeah, and you're like, wait, what? But anyway, because I watched Sword Art, and because my sister had watched it forever ago, and I saw her watching, I was like, okay, and I watched it, and I was like, hey, this is pretty good. And then we're venturing into spoiler territory for the rest of this, as we already have, so that's just the fair warning from now on. But like, they solve the problem so quickly, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so quickly they're out of the game, and then they're thrown into another one, and it's just, I gave up.
Kirito is definitely one of those protagonists that's a little overpowered.
Dude.
And I kind of like, sometimes when, you have that overpowered character in that anime, it's just
Like One Punch.
And they just beat everybody.
Like One Punch.
Yeah, One Punch Man, like Mob Psycho 100.
Well, that's literally that's Deus Ex Machina, God in the Machine.
I mean, it's...
character overpowered.
If it's written right, I think having an overpowered main character is cool. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm looking at you, Ryan Johnson, you disgrace.
Yeah, he did not write Ray Wright. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Ray Wright.
Ray Rice? Ah!
Oh, God.
Oh, no, hide your wives.
Whoa!
Oh, my word!
Everybody knows, but it happened, like,
Cancel.
when I was in middle school.
Anyway.
But anime, because we'll probably have an anime episode on here. I'm going to invite, like, maybe Arter.
We can invite Connor.
Talk on it, Connor.
Daniel Miller? Just kidding.
But, like, I definitely like to lean more fan. Attack on Titan. It's sad that they might cancel the second part of the season because people are getting so mad at the animation because they have to use CGI in it.
They have to CG it now.
Because the heads of, the Attack on Titan, because they almost didn't get a season 4 because Wit didn't want to do it, and there's just so strict of guidelines that because they have to what they're trying to do is get the anime to end around the same time the manga ends.
Yeah.
To ride out that hype as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's really strict guidelines, and so they can't animate fast enough, so they have to use CGI. And honestly, it doesn't look that bad. And the story's amazing. I'm loving it, and I really wish people would just stop being toxic about it and stop hating on it and just enjoy it for what it is, which is a phenomenal show.
Fan base is being toxic? Looking at you, lol.
And you have some other really great animes coming out this year, too. You got, like, Season 2 of Demon Slayer, with the Demon Slayer movie coming to the U.S., which is the highest selling movie in Japanese history.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
over last year when it came out, I think it made, I'd have to look it up, but I think it made like 30 billion yen or something like that, which only equates to like a few $1 billion.
A few billion?
No, not a few billion, a few $1 million.
A few $1 million. That's more than I've seen.
But I mean, it looks like and apparently it's really, really good. And because it passed Titanic, I think, near the end of last year.
I knew that.
And season 2 is apparently supposed to be really good. You have Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, fantasy anime, I think, is where it really shines. And then you obviously have your slice of lives and stuff like that. But fantasy definitely is where I lean when it comes to anime. With live action, I probably lean a little bit more fantasy than I do sci-fi.
Yeah. I like it. There's more of it right now, and there's more to choose from and go off of.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I think so far in all of the media we've talked about, I definitely lean more fantasy than I do sci-fi. There are some phenomenal stuff, and I love my sci-fi, but most of the stuff I watch and read are fantasy related.
And like movies, Jason, why don't you take this one to start?
Movies?
Yeah.
Let's see. There's so many different sci-fi movies, fantasy movies, other genre movies.
Oh yeah.
But when I think of sci-fi movies, I think of Alien, The Matrix, I, Robot. Would you say I Am Legend is more fantasy?
Terminator.
I would say no. I'd put I Am Legend in
or like
sci-fi.
dystopian sci-fi.
Dystopian sci-fi because of the virus being.
That's fair.
RoboCop.
Yeah.
Dread.
Yeah. Where like movies that have those sci-fi elements, it's always dystopian future where humanity is at the brink of extinction and they're fighting against robots, against humans that are controlling robots, against humans that have been altered by either mutant things such as gamma radiation, viruses, stuff like that. Yes.
Love and Monsters.
Did you finish that?
I have not finished it yet because I started I started watching it on a plane, and I'm about a half hour towards the end. That's one of those. That's a dystopian sci-fi, I'd say, done correctly. I really enjoyed that. I didn't really think I was going to. It looked very cheesy because Dylan Hunt or O'Brien, same thing. But I don't know.
Well, but like when you think fantasy, my first go-to fantasy movie, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah.
Which and the reason why is because there was so much care and passion put into that movie.
Oh yeah.
Where it's something that you enjoy, and then you look at movies that are made that the people are like doing it for a paycheck or doing it for
Star Wars sequel trilogy,
which I have never seen. But those movies where it's less about passion and more about money or more about like getting a story out, and it's like, oh,
I know I think they tried to make Lord of the Rings before Peter Jackson. And
well, there's the animated
and I've seen
they tried to make a live action and it didn't go over well, and that's why people were really, really worried when Peter Jackson was making it, because they were afraid that he was not going to be able to capture the magic of the novels as well as he did. And
Howard Shore said a
phenomenal job.
But have you seen the animated movie?
Yes.
It's been a long time.
It's on YouTube free.
Is it really?
Yep.
I did not know that. Because we had it like as a VHS.
VHS, yeah, we had the VHS as well.
But my go-to sci-fi movie will always be Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I can always go back and watch episode 3 and just listen to Obi-Wan Kenobi and our Lord and Savior Ewan McGregor say, "Hello there," a million times and not get tired.
But what would you classify movies within like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or movies like Hitchcock where it's superheroes?
Well, according to Google, it's fantasy.
It is. Would you say fantasy?
I wouldn't. Maybe I could see fantasy because I also consider The Boys fantasy as well, because it's the superpowers that's really the only thing that kind of, because the technology wise we're kind of there. I'd say we're pretty. We're getting there. Okay, we don't have vibranium, or maybe we do. We just haven't found it.
The nth metal, is that what it is? Hawkeye and.
Oh, yeah.
Or
what's your superpower?
I mean,
I have pretty good aim.
Technically,
darn it, I'm good at aiming.
Technically, Endgame maybe, so because it takes place in the future. It takes place in 2024.
Ooh.
I mean, Mad Max is considered sci-fi, and it takes place this year.
Yeah, Mad Max is definitely sci-fi, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only January, so I mean, Mad Max could still happen.
I swear
it's
to God.
possible.
But I'll be a warlord.
Which
one of you is playing guitar on top of my vehicle?
Dude, I will rock out on
the ocarina.
Ocarina.
Literally can only hear you from about 10 feet away, but hey.
But damn it, that 10 feet will be cool. I mean, for movies, for me, I mean, okay. Here's my thing. Fantasy, there's about 2 things that people, when you say fantasy, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, / Hobbit. You say science fiction.
So many.
There's so many more things that come to mind.
Star Trek. Star Wars.
Star Trek, Star Wars,
Alien.
Matrix, Alien, Mad Max, everything we just said.
Yeah.
I know technically it's like fantasy as far as like sci-fi goes. Oh my goodness, wow! It's technically fantasy as far as like Avengers and Marvel goes. I consider it more sci-fi because there's just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like fantasy to me, because when I think fantasy, I think Tolkien and Martin fantasy.
I do feel a little bad that we forgot apparently one of the biggest fantasy novels that I definitely didn't read.
The Warrior Cats.
In Narnia.
Oh yeah, Narnia. We didn't mention it. I mean, we didn't talk about Harry Potter either.
You bringing a
I
Harry
mean,
Potter.
would you consider?
That's- Okay, so C.S. Lewis is a very like faith-based person. He and J.K.
Rowling?
Not J.K. Rowling. I am so sorry. Tolkien.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jared. Yeah.
Tolkien.
Tolkien.
But anyway, they were friends.
Yeah.
And they utilized faith in their writing. Have you ever read the Narnia series?
Yes.
No.
Have you?
Exactly. You don't
haven't
read
Lord of the
books.
Rings. That's
That's
true.
true. The last
Literally-
book I read, I think, like all the way through, was probably Animal Farm.
Oh, really? But anyway, so they utilize they're both fantasy novels, but they utilize their own beliefs. And I know that with Tolkien, he actually because was he in World War One?
He was in World War One. He was in the Battle of the Somme.
Yeah, and he utilized that experience being in the military as part of
Yeah,
the
dude.
book.
That's. I mean, The Hobbit is one of those. Like The Hobbit. I think one of my favorite things senior year of high school was we read The Hobbit in class instead of like you know, the Grapes of Wrath or something like that. We read The Hobbit,
yeah.
and then being a Catholic high school and the Catholic influences because of
Yes.
Tolkien being Catholic, sorry, it applied into our curriculum. So we were able to read that and compare that to that. And then we also read that same year, we read All Quiet on the Western Front.
Okay.
And we were able to compare that. Because that was, you know, that first-hand account, air quotes, first-hand account was Quiet on the Western Front. And compare it into this fantasy world that got created. And see those parallels on, wait, this is what this is in real life. The dwarves are Jews, by the way.
And the thing that
Very controversially anti-Semitic. But, anyway.
Well, the thing that like really blows my mind about Tolkien is the fact that he created at least 15 different languages.
Yeah. Oh! I should have brought my book over here from my room today. Talking about this. All of the influence that he got.
Yeah.
The Tolkien handbook.
Yeah.
On where all of his stuff came from.
Because he created so many different Elvish dialects, Orc dialects, Ent dialects, Dwarvish. I mean, he also basically kind of just he helped basically create D&D, like not directly, but
he helped
indirectly
literally almost every fantasy.
takes from Tolkien.
Dwarves, elves, orcs, goblins.
He basically helped
They all came
create
from there.
that.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing. And I think I don't think it's his son. It has to be his grandson. That's coming out with a new book, or it came out with a new
they're
book.
finishing. They're finishing. They're like, hey, look at these 3 pages we found. Let's finish it.
Let's write an entire 1,000-page novel.
What was the 3 pages? The dedication.
But well,
Chapter 1.
So going to C.S. Lewis and talking about
Normal.
faith, have you ever seen the movies?
I think
I've only seen the
one.
first one.
I watched the first one, and then I watched Prince
Caspian.
Caspian. I was gonna say Prince Caspian, then I almost said Prince of Persia.
But anyway, like those books, they're written kind of out of order,
Yeah.
but also not. But also like it's the kids are going from being like
children.
like adolescence to, I think the last book, at least the oldest son is 30.
Yeah, because it's. That was always one of those that kind of confused me because in the wardrobe they live a whole life.
Yeah,
And then they come back
in
out
there.
and they're the exact same age,
Yeah.
and then they're back
Well,
in,
and, like,
back out.
And time moved so much quicker for the wardrobe
Mm-hmm.
dimension, whatever, however you wanted to decide it. Where like when they're in their 20s and 30s, it's been 3 millennia.
Yeah.
I mean, which would you consider the monster not necessarily monster but like Godzilla's verse and King Kong's universe? Would you consider those more sci-fi, or would you consider them more fantasy?
I'd consider it fantasy because fantastic elements of just monsters existing. But then you get into that discussion of Mecha Godzilla.
Mecha Ghidorah.
which is possibly going to be in Kong versus Godzilla.
Like because we saw at the end of Godzilla King of the Monsters that they found Ghidorah.
Who is we?
Yeah,
everybody that's you guys haven't seen Godzilla King of the
No.
Monsters?
I haven't watched it yet.
Literally,
we could watch that later tonight if you guys want to. It's a good movie. At least like visually, it is a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's like Transformers, which is another.
I wonder what Transformers is.
I don't know if you say sci-fi, but it's one of the. It's like that where nobody cares about the humans. Nobody cares about the humans or their story or whatever. We just want to see the monsters and the robots just fight and do stuff.
Correct!
Which is why, because I think they're creating a new Transformers movie.
Yeah.
And everybody's hoping that it doesn't take place on Earth, and we see what happens on Cybertron.
Cybertron? Okay, that would be like a cinematic and a what am I looking for here? CGI Marvel. Because to make Cybertron itself, whack. Because we got like a scene of it. Was it in Bumblebee or was it in like?
It might have been Bumblebee.
Was it the Mark Wahlberg? That I'm pretty sure it's that one.
Because there's 5, right? There's 5 Transformers movies, and then
geez.
Bumblebee.
I had to think for a moment.
But yeah, but he could be fighting Mecha Ghidorah. He could, or apparently some people saw Mecha Godzilla in the trailer.
I think it is 5. Real quick, hold on.
Yeah.
While I have this spark, because it's Transformers.
Yeah.
And then Revenge of the Fallen.
Dark Moon.
Dark of the Moon. Age of Extinction. Is that the dinosaurs? And then Last Night.
Oh, that's
and then
right.
Bumblebee. But in one of those, there's been scenes of Cybertron, and those were just like, well, there's half our budget on 2 minutes.
Around
it'd be so cool to see.
Michael Bay just goes explosion, money.
And see, I think Michael Bay does get a really bad rap because boom, kaboom, boom, but the guy makes money.
There's
a reason
those
he
movies
keeps getting employed
because they are just visually, story-wise, as in the sequel trilogy, they're not great, but visually, and I will give that like what somebody we would listen to say, might have been Bricky. But as we saw, visually, they are pretty good.
Yeah.
Story-wise, no. Visually, they're fun to look at.
Yeah, that's my thing with the sequel trilogy too. Is Rey is a terrible character.
She's a Mary Sue.
She's horrible, and if I get hate for it, that's okay. If people like this, you know what? People did like it. I mean, there's whole fan bases for it too.
I
Good
liked
for them.
it originally when I first went into the theaters and I saw each movie in theaters and I saw the movies. I was like, wow, you know what? That was a good movie. And then I kind of sit back and I look at it.
And then I ruined it for you.
And I actually kind of see all the stuff that's wrong with it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of problems and they did a lot of wrong.
Yeah, and I've gotten a lot of hate for talking about this before too. But like, literally, I was so excited when Force Awakens was announced. Like,
so was
I almost cried.
Oh my god.
And it was a dog fight to get tickets to opening night. And I missed out on them. And then one of my friends at the time, she was like, hey, our group's all going. This guy's brother's not going anymore.
You can come.
You can come with us if you want to pay for the ticket. I was like, I will pay for the ticket 37 times over. And I'm sitting in the theater and we watched it. And literally everyone starts cheering and is all excited when the beginning credits start.
Yeah, I definitely
the title crawl.
I cried during.
And then I read the title crawl, and I looked at my friend, and I was like, "Seems familiar." And then we started watching the movie, and there was like 3 times there was one guy in the theater that would go, "What the hell?" out loud at the movie, like when things happen.
I mean,
and then the movie ended, and no one clapped.
7 was definitely kind of a clone of 4.
And no one clapped or anything, and I turned and looked at her, and she looked at me, and we both went, A New Hope at the exact same time. And the same guy gets up, that was a pile of crap, and threw his popcorn at the screen.
Well, then you had,
No!
the cinematic Marvel piece that was episode 8.
Good Lord. Last Jedi was one of those things that I was like, that looked pretty, but couldn't tell you what happened because it was a piece of crap and my synapses are fried.
Yeah, it was so bad. The fight choreography was god awful.
Okay, here's the thing: as someone who has been studying stage
choreo.
combat for years now and been choreographing for years now, that was the biggest cancer I've seen on screen for fight choreo for a long, long time.
So bad. And
Let me just do a flip and stab myself real quick.
I mean, Leia just flying through space.
Superman Leia. Why are your capillaries not bursting there, lady?
The Force.
She's just built different.
The fact that
Have y'all seen Event Horizon?
Yes.
When the dude gets stuck in when his helmet comes off?
Mhm.
Good movie.
Yeah.
Keep sidetracking.
But I mean, Rey was able to do stuff with little to zero
So
training.
frustrating.
All of her training was
And
off
yet-
screen, Zachary.
And yet Kylo,
I don't
who
know.
had
I've
been
never seen the
training
movie.
I know you've never seen the
years
movies.
and years under Luke Skywalker, under Snoke, under Palpatine.
Okay, this fanboy had an aneurysm when Luke came on screen in Mando season 2, by the way.
I cried. It was beautiful.
Okay, Star Wars theory.
We actually got to see Luke do cool stuff.
To excuse you,
We
Mark
we
Hamill,
gotta
am I
see
a
him-
joke to you?
Mark Hamill sitting here like,
We
I'm
got
one
to
of your
see him
6 subscribers.
force crush a droid. I mean, The Mandalorian did Star Wars right,
Yeah.
and
Can we just hand them the reins? Those two?
So the problem is like because I actually listened to like some people talk about it. We do not want Favreau and Filoni kind of holding we want them on the creative end. We do not want them in the front office where Kathleen Kennedy is, because she handles all the business stuff, and that would be just a waste of their talents.
I hate her. But yes. I know.
We want them creating stuff, creating all these.
That's why I just said,
amazing
can we give them the
stories.
creative reins? I don't want them doing the business side. She can do the money
Like,
side for all I care.
I'm
As long as she has
yeah.
no creative input, I'm cool.
Because I mean, I don't know. I feel like she might be getting a little bit better. Maybe just because she's been greenlighting a lot of the stuff that we want to see. She greenlit the Obi-Wan show with Hayden Christensen returning as Darth Vader. She greenlit Bad Batch. She greenlit
her going,
Boba Fett.
not going to cost me money. That's putting her in your good graces. It's not going to cost us lots of money.
I mean, she's greenlighting stuff. So I mean, that's all she's good for right now is giving the
Hey.
thumbs up.
Hey, Moon Knight getting greenlit.
I don't think that was her, but
I know that wasn't her, but
Moon
I'm
Knight,
just saying.
I'm excited for Moon Knight, but we are.
Where are you,
straying
Dracula, you nerd? You owe me money. There was
We're
a lot of
straying
profanity
so far
left out of
from
that
the-
quote.
from the sci-fi fantasy debate, but
We're not even debating anymore. We're just pissing and moaning about Star Wars.
I don't think it was a debate. There was no point counterpoint.
oh, that's very true.
That's
the
why-
discussion.
And then we'll just move on from, I guess, unless you have any final
I guess to the
quick
last,
points.
to the last, I guess, visual media that I know of. Anyways, I am kind of dumb, but it's video games.
Well, I was gonna wait for video games because I feel like we can spend a lot of time on that and do a really quick, like obscure, more like board games, card games.
I mean, I don't really play many board games or card games.
Okay, card game. Do you have anything you want to say
Unless
before I
you
get
count-
going?
Yeah, unless you count like Magic the Gathering and
Yeah,
Pokemon.
that's-
Well, yeah,
that's
I mean,
literally-
obviously you count those, but I mean, that other than that, I don't really play any fantasy or board.
Card game fantasy wins out. I mean,
Well, yeah. Well, you've got Sentinels of the
that's the
Multiverse.
thing. There's deck builders that I would consider card games. With that Sentinels of the Multiverse. I even consider
Yeah.
Munchkin more a card game. Put that
Yeah.
in with that. But I'd say fantasy wins out. There's just it's way more.
Easier
It's
to-
easier. I mean, Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone.
I mean, I guess D&D is technically a board card game-ish. Board game, really.
Tabletop.
It's a
Tabletop.
tabletop RPG. But I mean, there's a Star Wars RPG.
I mean, yeah, D&D you can literally do anything with. You can make it horror.
You do
can
either
make it
or.
fantasy. You can make it sci-fi like we did with our campaign last
We need to do
year.
some one-shot campaigns.
I'm thinking of writing some or finding some.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. I mean, tabletop, there's both. Because tabletop, there's D&D, Warhammer, Age of Sigmar. There's Star Wars Legion. There's Battle for Middle. There's Middle Earth, War of the Ring, and stuff like that. There's all kinds of that stuff.
Risk.
Risk.
I mean, I guess you have like Risk. You have your Your civilizations. I guess
I know we
that's
only played. I know you guys have only really played like Legion once. Oh, we played that Scythe. You guys played that Scythe game?
Oh yeah, we played that freshman year.
Scythe?
That was a long time ago.
Were you there?
Probably
I don't
not.
think we were, because it was Brendan,
It was
me, Peter,
Ryan.
Was Bryce there? I think it was Bryce.
Maybe it was Bryce, not Ryan. There was some ginger there.
It was probably Bryce.
That was fun.
That was fun.
Love you, Peter Novak.
But yeah, I guess video games are really the only other media we haven't really.
Yeah, that's something we can all talk about. I'm gonna say sci-fi for me as far as tabletop because Warhammer 40K.
Yeah.
And Star Wars Legion. I'm gonna just really quick with that. Now, yeah, video games.
It's really I love both genres. I love my Mass Effects and my Star Wars, like KOTOR, but I also love my Personas and my Middle Earth, Shadow of Wars, and stuff like that. I wasn't gonna drag on Persona.
Jason?
I mean, I would say that I'm more of a fantasy video game person.
Yeah,
Because it's
Legend
the
of Zelda.
suspension of disbelief,
Mhm.
whatever that phrase is. I'm not a...
This guy's sci-fi because Mass Effect and like
Yeah.
Dead Space, I'd say.
Oh yeah, I love. Granted, I've never finished any Dead Space game, but Dead Space is definitely a perfect example of sci-fi horror done right. Until they went into 3, where they did like more of an action.
I was gonna say that's more of an FPS, wasn't it?
Fantasy horror. The perfect example of that is Resident Evil.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love the RE games, man. I don't know how many hours I have in Resident Evil 4. Never beaten it. That game's hard to me. Okay. Dark Souls.
Yeah. Do you know how Dark Souls got started? Like how it got created?
I'm staring at you blankly. I think that's a good answer.
So basically, Demon Souls.
Yes, I knew
that came
Demon
first.
Souls.
And the creator, I'm gonna look him up really quick, and I'm just gonna keep talking so this doesn't have any long, awkward pauses. So
While you look that up, I tend to lean more fantasy as well. I bet you can't guess my number 1 fantasy game of all time.
Pokemon.
Wow. Yep, World of Warcraft.
Wow.
I mean, dude, I have all the Warcraft Chronicles. I've read all of them, cover to cover. I've read all the books for them. I just love that world. And I like fantasy worlds too because, like Jason said, the suspension of disbelief. And they tend to be beautiful to look at as far as being in-game. I love looking at a pretty world in-game. That's why I really want to play Ghost of Tsushima.
it is a really
Gorgeous. I want to buy a PS5
Gorgeous.
and play it.
Yeah, it is a really, really
'Cause
beautiful game.
Beautiful. But the end, yeah, I mean, Jedi Fallen Order. Halo. That's my hard toss up.
Halo.
Helheim. Go. That's how you got.
Miyazaki is his name.
Yes.
And so, what FromSoft was doing with that, like, they knew it was going to be. They thought, anyways, it was going to be a really, really bad game commercially. And so Miyazaki was like, you know what? Give me creative reign. Let me do whatever I want. And they're like, okay. So they gave Miyazaki creative reins, and he did whatever he wanted. So he made bosses, and you know what? Demon Souls. It was a bad game. It was
terrible.
it did terribly commercially. It was a train wreck, but it started to get people interested, and it kind of created that idea. And FromSoft was like, you know what? That you might have an idea there. You might have something, and so they let him make Dark Souls, and it grew from there and grew a cult following, and then became one of the best games of the decade, and probably one of the best games of all time, and created an entire subgenre just because they let him basically mess around with their train wreck to create what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Dark Souls is a phenomenal fantasy game, and I love it every time I play, even though I get mad. Apex is a fun sci-fi game. You consider that sci-fi. We do not have gravity wells. We do not have...
But we're so close to having everything in Avengers.
Portals.
Don't hurt me. No, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd say I just tend to fall fantasy because those are the games I can sit and play by my lonesome. Sci-fi, other than like Halo and a couple other games here and there, I don't really play alone.
I mean, I think you'd enjoy Mass Effect if
Well,
you played it.
I'm sure I would,
It's free to
but I'm
play.
gonna wait for it. I have them all installed on my Xbox
wait for
One.
yeah,
but-
because apparently the Legendary, because there's a trailer coming out next week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait and
And-
see, and if it's like 3 years away, then I'll play them.
Well,
but
it's supposed to come out like first quarter this year.
that's why I'm saying I might wait and just do that. Have it look
Apparently,
pretty.
I mean, like visually, there's not going to be, other than the first one, there's not going to be too much of an upgrade. There's going to be an upgrade, of course, but apparently they're completely revamping the mechanics and everything for
Really?
the first game, and
Mhm.
I'm really, really excited for it.
Yo,
but,
what's Minecraft?
I mean, it depends. Are you playing with like a
Real world?
specific
Oh my gosh, I'm not.
sci-fi booster
Real world.
pack, or are you
Fantasy.
playing? Like, are you playing like a Harry Potter world, a Lord of the Rings world? Are you playing a Star Wars?
I'm gonna
pack?
just go ahead and say I definitely lean fantasy. I just double checked and looked at my top 10 games of the decade list. Majority of it's fantasy, so I'm gonna go for it and say that.
I'm kind of a toss-up between fantasy and sci-fi.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of games sci-fi related that I love and enjoy, and there's a bunch of fantasy games that I love and enjoy.
I just, like I said, it just takes the cake for me more overall because those are the games that I can just sit down and play and just
Mhm.
relax.
Yeah.
The sci-fi games I play piss me off,
That's
like
fair.
Apex. But those are the games I like to play competitively and like play with you guys and stuff like that. But fantasy is that that fun little safe haven piece that I have that I can just like when you walked in, I was playing Breath of the Wild the other day, just sitting there, minding my
yeah.
business, vibing, getting my butt kicked by Ganon, and then
But I mean,
finally winning.
Overall, in my opinion, across all media, I love both sci-fi and fantasy. They're
Yeah.
phenomenal genres, and there's been a lot done wrong in every media.
Oh,
in
everything
both
ever.
genres. I mean, but there's been so much done right and so much great stuff out there in fantasy and sci-fi in particular, and those are probably like the head runners of media. I mean, yeah, you have your horrors, but horrors hit or miss for some people,
Yeah.
and some people, they like a little bit of horror, like they like to be a little scared, but not like, necromorph on your back every 2 seconds.
Redonk, let me tell you what.
You have your slice of lives, and you have your realisms, but sci-fi and fantasy definitely head the genre department, in my opinion,
Yeah.
across all media, and I love both genres equally.
Your final take?
I would say for me, I am a bigger fan of fantasy just
Mhm.
overall, because if sci-fi isn't done correctly, I think it's boring.
Yeah, that's
fair.
fair.
Like, I've seen all 3 of the Matrix movies, and I literally sat through the first one and thought, this isn't too bad. The second one, I went, oh. Third one, I was like,
Why?
Yeah, that was pretty whack.
and it's ironic because my dog is named after the main character of the Matrix TV show. I didn't name him, but
That's fair. And then I guess I'll finish it out by saying that I have to agree with Jason. I tend to lean more fantasy for kind of all the same reasons. But my big thing is, there's always that if I could be born in a different time or transported to your favorite world, like fantasy all the way.
yeah.
Like I'd kill to live in Middle Earth, dude. Like it'd be awesome. Like stuff like that.
Move to New Zealand.
That's the plan. Anyway. Yeah, does anyone have any fun? I don't know. I don't really have anything else to add. I don't want to drone on and on forever. But yeah, just fantasy for me. Anything else?
No. I mean, yeah, Jason's leaning more fantasy. I'm kind of split in the middle. I like both equally, and
Fair.
there's a lot of stuff on both sides that I enjoy, and then you lean more fantasy. But I think we can all agree that both genres are fun, and yeah, so I think we'll
You done there?
call it there for
All right.
the podcast.
Yeah. We'll catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Wait. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Sorry. I just wanted to say make sure you guys tune in next week. We'll probably have an episode trying to come out every week. And yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Catch us on Twitch. Link in the description. Have a great day.